In 2006, not only iPhone did not exist, I would also mention YouTube was 1 year old. Facebook was a 200-person company.
It's so hard because you have 2 years of maybe zero traction. How do you know that this was the right path to follow?
There are 5 billion people on this planet who can read or write. Let's target them all.
Today, I am joined by Alan Lau. Alan is a Canadian entrepreneur who is the co-founder and former CEO of Wattpad. Wattpad is a social storytelling platform that allows users to upload their own stories online. As of today, it has over 100 million visits per month on its platform. Wattpad was acquired by the South Korean tech conglomerate Naver in 2021 for $600 million. Today, Alan runs a venture capital firm called Two Small Fish, investing in promising deep tech startups, building our future. Peter Thiel has a statement where he talks about contrarian truth. So he asks the startup founders he chooses to fund what kind of contrarian truth that they hold dear or they believe to be true that no one agrees with. When you first started Wattpad in 2006, what was the contrarian truth that you believed to be true back then?
Let me spend 30 seconds explain what Wattpad is. I think many of you know already, but in case you don't, it's an online platform for people to read and share fictions, from science fiction to romance stories and everything in between. We grew from 0 user in 2006 to 100 million users at the end. When the company got acquired. It's a mobile reading app, but it's also a user-generated content platform for people to share their writings. So at that time, I would say the most perhaps obvious and most common opposition is, oh, this idea won't work. No one will write for free. I think that's the most obvious one because the publishing industry, for example, has been around for hundreds of years. And the way it works is you write, you find an agent, at least in more recent decades, find an agent, that agent will present your writing to the book publisher, a few people, the gatekeeper, 2 or 3 people, maybe sometimes one, would make that decision, whether this is worth publishing or not. That's how the system has been working for many years. And the motivation, at least from the publishing system perspective, people want to make money. They want to get published to earn money. And why would anyone write for free on a platform? So I think that was the most contrarian view at that time. But of course, there are many other things. Why would anyone read on a tiny phone? And remember, 2006, it was 2 years before iPhone came out. The screen was tiny, right? But I guess coming back to the contrarian view is actually, I don't think anything in hindsight is contrarian. But it's almost like the best opportunity in plain sight that nobody can see. And by definition, startups, especially outlier startups, they're outliers because they do things differently. That's the definition of outlier. So I guess that's why Peter Thiel, and perhaps many of the successful startups would tell you 1 or 2 things, sometimes many things, that they are just so different than other people.
What was the smallest market you thought that you could target and then grow from?
In 2006, not only iPhone did not exist. I would also mention YouTube was 1 year old.
Yeah.
Facebook was a 200-person company, right? So the concept of user-generated content was nascent. I'm not even sure that word existed at that time. So as I mentioned earlier, the publishing system is about gatekeeping and internet. One thing the internet is very good at, and perhaps there are a few interesting characteristics, is free, it's ubiquitous, it's real time, and it's global or borderless. So it's anything but gatekeeping. And I think that's one thing very interesting. Perhaps that's the market gap that we saw is, well, if everyone is gatekeeping, then perhaps there's an opportunity for us to open up the floodgate and let everyone who wants to write to be able to share their writing more freely. And of course, mobile reading is on the demand side. You because it's easy to access. Everyone would carry a device. Wants to carry what they want to read on a device that they carry all the time. Now of course everyone is doing this. Is table stakes these days. But remember, 20 years ago, Wattpad is almost 20 years old, which is kind of crazy to think about. At that time, it was a crazy concept, and I think these are the two gaps that we saw.
When PayPal started, they started with the eBay power sellers, which they thought were the ones that would transact the most on a e-commerce platform, and that needed that kind of digital payment solution. Was there a way that in which you kind of approached or targeted your first group of users, just in the same way as maybe like when Facebook first started, they targeted the universities and high schools? How do you conceptualize who do I start with?
I wish at that time I know more about this. I don't think we were that savvy at that time, to be honest. Our thesis at that time actually was a little bit different. We didn't really target a group of users or a certain segment. Our thesis at that time was, well, there are 5 billion people on this planet who can read or write. Let's target them all. Without realizing, in hindsight, we were building a marketplace between readers and writers, and we had a huge problem called chicken and egg. Without any readers, no one would want to upload anything because there's no readership. There's no incentive for the writers to upload anything, especially it's free. Right? There's not even monetary value and any other value. But on the reader side, there's nothing. What do you want? There's nothing you can read. Right, so that's the chicken and egg problem that I talk about, and we figured that out pretty much like a few weeks before we launched. Hey, there's nothing to read on the platform, and then one of us means my co-founder and I. The two of us, the two co-founders of the company. I think one of us. Wait a minute, we perhaps can make use of the classic books. They are all copyright free. We can make it freely available on our platform, which is quite aligned with what we do. So we spent a few days find the digital version of the Pride and Prejudice and all those classic books. I think we imported 17,000 titles that are copyright free on our platform to kind of get the snowball rolling down the hill, for lack of a better term. And in a way, classic book readers, it's a long way to answer your question. Classic book readers were kind of unintentionally became our first target market.
I don't think people think about startups back then in that frame, right? In which which is the smallest addressable market that I could start with now. And this is where maybe the big tech players back then were not focusing on. So I guess you were probably the earliest solution to classic books online or app first experience. And then the platform evolved.
Yes, precisely. That's in a way, I don't think we were that savvy back then. We were trying to figure out, but we kind of find that niche.
Yeah.
And to kind of validate what you were just talking about, after we imported those 17,000 titles, and we start to realize if you ask the question on Google, like punch in mobile reading classic books or Pride and Prejudice mobile app reading, something like that, we actually rank pretty high, right? I think there may be a very, very small niche in the world's population, would do that, would want to do that, but we were the best because we were the only one. So in a way, that's how we start to attract, become the best product on a very small niche, and attract at a segment of the user, and then over time we grew to adjacent space.
Yeah, the difference between a startup and maybe a small medium enterprise is really the rate of growth. When was that first moment where you felt like this wasn't just going to be a small business, where you felt like, oh, this really had a chance to take off and hit escape velocity? Was there a moment in time?
Because it was such a small niche. At that time, at least, reading classic books on not even the iPhone, on the Nokia phone. For those who are old enough to remember the Nokia phone or the flip phone, the Motorola flip phone, right? It's such a small niche. So despite what I said early on, like we want to target 5 billion people, I think we had very, very strong vision, very ambitious. At the same time, the reality was we got minimal traction. We were struggling for 3-4 years. And funny enough, like when I talk about, it's a, Wattpad is online platform for people to read and share stories, share their writings. The share piece, no one uploaded anything in the first 2 or 3 years.
Wow.
I think the first upload came in 2009, almost 3 years after we started the company. So it's a long way to say that moment only came maybe 6 months, 9 months after the first writer show up. Because what happened was the first writer, she perhaps pinged a lot of her friends, hey, come check out my story on Wattpad. And she brought maybe 100 readers to read her story. So that 100 people told the second writer. So 1 became 2, 2 became 4. It started to multiply, but it wasn't fast, It's like the second writer only came maybe a few weeks later, and then the third writer showed up maybe 2 weeks later, something like that. So in the early days, I in the evening, I always check out, who is signing up. Check out, have they uploaded anything? So I want to know all the writers on the platform, and that wasn't that hard. There was only 5 of them initially, right? But I kept doing this for maybe 6 months, 9 months, and then there was one evening I keep on bumping into new people in the community. I can follow who is following what, use that follow feature to find out who is new to the platform. I just find new writers endlessly on the platform because there were so many of them.
Yeah,
that's when I realized, oh my goodness, we are building some. It's working. We are building something that perhaps millions of writers can come. I think that day, if I remember correctly, was maybe late 2009. That was the aha moment.
It's so hard. It's so hard because you have 2 years of maybe zero traction. How do you know that this was the right path to kind of follow?
In fact, I would say we knew it was the wrong path because it didn't work. So after 1 year, we as in Ivan and I, he was living in Vancouver at that time. I was living in, I've been living in Toronto for many years. So he I think he attended a wedding or something, came back to Toronto. So we sat down and had a conversation. Like, Ivan, it's not working. So we have to figure something out. And we were so deflated. We almost gave up. And I think one of us said, well, we our hosting cost is only $5 because no one is using it. But we had some banner ads on the website to generate some revenue as a test. But the traffic was so low, we got a $2 check from Google. So one of us kind of half jokingly said, well, we are $3 away from break even. Let's not give up. So in a way we gave up, but in a way we did not give up because it cost us nothing to maintain this. So we were working on Wattpad kind of on a part-time, almost downgraded Wattpad to a side project for a year or two. We did a million things on the side. We find contract jobs. We did part-time jobs. Yeah. We were even crazy enough to start another company. We had another product idea and started that, But that's how we endured those 2 years to keep us going.
And when you hit the aha moment in 2009, when was it in your mind that you thought, I needed venture capital funding to kind of really expand this and build this?
Yeah, we raised our angel round in early 2010. Because by that time, once the first rider came, the second rider came, then it started to grow exponentially in a span of maybe 6-9 months. So towards the end of 2009, from a reader's perspective, we had close to maybe 500,000 users already. On the writer side, maybe a few thousands. Big enough. We had enough traction, and we, as I mentioned, that was the aha moment. The big vision that we originally envisioned actually starting, I emphasize starting to become reality. We can visualize what the future is like. That's when we raised the first round of angel funding in 2010. But even then, to be honest, like all our angel investors, in a way told us the expectation, perhaps, if we have the exit value at $10-20 million or something, everyone would be celebrating. That's how low the expectations were, from the angel investors' perspective. And then in 2011, we start to seriously consider venture funding. That's when we raised our Series A. I have to clarify, the terminology was quite different 15 years ago. Series A then is now the seed. The angel round is the pre-seed. Series A is our Series C or Series B back then. It's quite different. Just want to recalibrate that. So 2011, we start to raise our first institutional round, and very fortunately, we had Union Square Ventures in New York became our first institutional investor. They backed many iconic companies, including First Check to Twitter, Zynga, pretty popular gaming company at the time. Coinbase, more recently, MongoDB, Cloudflare. They were the one who could see the future in a way. So having that venture capital backing very crucial to us, because not only just the capital, but smart investors around the cap table, especially they all also. They have to know how, basically, in short. We can see how we grew the company in a very different way than we originally envisioned. Not saying we changed the vision, but tactically, strategically, the type of directions, there were a lot of fine-tuning with their help.
What was your pitch to them back then? And what do you think they saw in you?
Very, very good question. Have to really want to share this because we pitched to like 40 different firms. Many of them said no to us.
Oh.
The objection usually was, how do you make money? It's free. And many venture firms, I think 39 of the 40, excluding Unisquare Ventures, asked us for financial projection. And I was very honest to those venture investors. Like, I can give you one, but it's just a make-up number. If you want us to hit a higher revenue number, I just change one number on the spreadsheet. It will be higher. I honestly have no clue. Not because I really have no clue. That's just not our focus at the time. Because perhaps in hindsight, I can articulate this more clearly. In this case, we built the technology first, of course, the platform, the mobile app, and then we productize it, turn this into something very useful. That's why, in a way, perhaps our first version of our product was really sucky, not too good. That's why no one uploaded. It took a little bit of time to refine that, to turn this into a usable product for the readers and writers. And then once we formed the community, we kind of know that perhaps commercialization, figuring out how to make money is perhaps we can. That's the next phase. We don't have to do this all at the same time. The technology, product, and commercialization, they are perhaps we can do it sequentially. And I think Unisquare Ventures was the only one did not ask for financial projection. They were the only one did not even look at revenue and all those numbers. In fact, at the time we already have some banner ads. It's not like we have zero revenue. It's just small. And they were the only one at the time ask us, Alan, as one of the condition of the investment, we are considering as a condition you have to remove all the banner ads. When I saw that email from them, I was scratching my head. I called them up right away. That's not a typo, right? You're asking us to become a zero revenue again. And the answer was, no, it's not a typo. Yes, that's what we are thinking, because that's the right thing to do. The user experience, you have too many ads. It just the user experience is not great. So for this company, early on, perhaps the better approach is make sure that you have the most top-notch user experience to attract the best readers and the writers. And once you have that network effect, once you have the community, once you have a lot of users, millions of them, both readers and the writers, then you have a very, very defensible business. You can figure out how to monetize later on. And that's precisely what they told me. Of course, we kind of have some of this concept already, but it wasn't as nicely articulated as them. So that really amazing validation to us, and off we go.
You had such a tier one kind of venture capital firm backing you, but instead of moving to where they were, which was New York City, or going to the standard Silicon Valley route, you chose to stay in Toronto. Yep. Why do you choose to do that?
Also have to give some credit to Unisquare Ventures. There's many other VCs I pitched to, especially Silicon Valley VCs. You have to move to Silicon Valley, or at least open up an office. And Unisquare, I asked them, what's your opinion on this? Do you think it's helpful? Their opinion was, we don't really care. You have to like where you live. You live in Toronto, That's why you choose to live in Toronto, and that's the most important thing. That's what they said. And then when we raised Series B, we spent even more time in Silicon Valley, and of course we saw the same objection, right? By that time, I could articulate why building this in Toronto is actually better. And my message to the VC is the company is already taking off. We have amazing brand from an employer perspective in Toronto. And Toronto is not a small city. Yesterday I just saw the news. We passed 7 million people for the first time in the greater Toronto area. And I don't need to hire 1 million people. I just need to hire the best, perhaps the best 100 in the next couple of years or 3-4 years, in the foreseeable future, near future, I should say, a few hundred people, perhaps. This is easily can be done, and we have the best brand name, so we could attract the best people in Toronto, whereas in the Valley, it's uber competitive. I have to compete with Google, Facebook at the time they already big, but also have to compete with the then up and coming Airbnb and Uber and all those companies. I'm getting, allow me to say, not the best talent. Perhaps even the bottom of the barrel. So the big fish, small pond effect would really work for me. And in hindsight, I was absolutely right. I was able to attract some of the best people and build a company, perhaps like mostly in Toronto, even towards the end of before the acquisition.
You moved to Halifax as well, which is what most people, I think, in Singapore would have no clue where that is. Mm-hmm. Why that counterintuitive move?
We expanded. That's our second headquarters. And for those who have never heard of Halifax, and if you are not Canadian, you probably have, very few of you have heard of Halifax. It's actually the largest city in Atlantic Canada, but the population is small, only like 500,000 people. So it's a sweet spot between too large and too small. Let's step back and to like 2019. We were able to attract a lot of the best talent, but between 2011 and 2019, something happened in Toronto. Not only Wattpad became a scale-up, there were maybe 10, 15, 20 companies became very prominent, successful startups became scale-up in Toronto. So competing for talent already it became an issue. And then around maybe 2017, not only I was competing with the local top companies, Silicon Valley is coming. Instacart, they open up their office there. Instacart's founders actually Canadians. They were from Waterloo originally, so they know the ecosystem already. They open up a shop. They want to hire 300 people. So that was the aha moment that my big fish, small pond effect is diminishing, because maybe I'm the big fish, but there are many big fish in the same pond now. And then the trigger point was in 2019 when Google announced they want to hire 5,000 people. That's not the most important thing. The most important thing was Google bought a building, and guess where that building is? Literally 30-second walk from the Wattpad office. So the proximity effect, it's almost like I'm hiring sign in front of my company every single day. All my employees, all the people coming for job interviews will see, okay, wow, Google is right next door. Maybe I should apply to them too. That triggered me to think about the second headquarters. And to answer your question, why Halifax? Number one, first of all, I want to recreate that big fish, small pond effect. But I don't want to think about headquarters 3, headquarters 4, headquarters 5. I want to do headquarters 2 and stop there. And I was looking at different cities and across Canada, because I expect some of the employees would move to the second headquarters. Opening up in the U.S. was not a consideration. And just coincidentally, I bumped into a friend of mine in Toronto. He was from Toronto but moved to Halifax, and he was complaining that it's so hard to go to Silicon Valley. He has like a few employees in Silicon Valley. There's no direct flights from Halifax to Toronto. And I asked him, wait a minute, there's no direct flights between Halifax and Silicon Valley? He said, yes. Wait a minute, that's great. Silicon Valley is not coming to Halifax because it's so hard, right? When I look at Calgary, they have direct flights. And other cities, they have direct flights. Halifax is further away from Silicon Valley, but it's 1 hour, an hour and a half, maybe just under 2 hours. A short flight from Toronto, but I could do day trip. It's only one time zone away. I could go to Halifax and come back home for dinner. So all those factors taken into consideration, but it's in a way the inaccessibility to Silicon Valley actually I turned this around became my unfair advantage.
How was the talent concentration in Halifax? Were there talents that you needed? Because you're building a tech product, so you need software engineers, coders, and stuff like that.
Despite it's only 500,000 people, they have 7 universities within driving distance. It's a university town. So one of the biggest one is called Dalhousie. Dalhousie's computer science student body has 1,200. I don't need to hire 1,200, right? So they do have many talents from the school, and also because it's a smaller city, Toronto is very expensive. So we start to hear, even before we open up the Halifax office, we have a few people came from Halifax working for us in Toronto already, but they all want to move back to Halifax. And, that gave us all the insights, to give us the conviction. This is actually doable.
Mm. So throughout the whole time of from 2007 all the way to 2021, you were like the CEO as a startup to scale up to eventually what many people might call a unicorn. Growth process must have been exponential in terms of the company, or maybe in terms of the way you lead and run. Help me understand, in that position as the CEO of the startup, what do you think the main role should be?
I started 3 companies, but that was my first CEO job. And the learning curve was very, very steep. A few things that I recognize. Number one, as a CEO of the fast-paced company, you almost have to be unrecognizable every 2 years, because otherwise you would not be growing fast enough. You are being left behind by your own fast-paced company. And my calendar changes every 2 years. How I spend my time and all those things changes every year or two. But I guess the most important realization was, in fact, one of our investors talked about this, and I in hindsight, I agree 110% is extremely useful to me, is a great CEO only does 3 things. Number one, set the vision and strategy of the company and communicate that to all stakeholders. That includes investors, customers, users, and employees, and all the partners. Number 2, hire the best possible talent that you can afford at that time. Different stages, you can afford different people, right? But the principle is hire the best possible talent and let them execute your vision and strategy. And number 3, make sure there's enough cash in the bank. That's it. Actually, deceptively simple. I would say many great CEOs, they do more than that. But these 3 things, if you don't get it right, you cannot become a great CEO. So this is what I learned. So in that context, is my job quickly became unlike an early stage CEO, you have to wear multiple hats, all this stuff that your 2 employees could not do for you. You have to fill that gap, to delegate pretty much everything. But to make delegation work, you have to give the team sufficient context, give them enough direction, and let them focus on executing the execution of the vision and strategy. So I think that's evolved into focusing on these 3 things. Maybe after Series B, when we have like 30 people, it wasn't big, 20, 30 people. Then I have to switch to that type of mindset.
You spend 45 minutes to an hour writing a daily update. That seems almost counterintuitive. Is that a form of you doing that daily communication to your team about the vision or the strategy of the company?
Yes, that's the first, the 3 things. The first one, vision and strategy, and communicating that to all stakeholders, right? That fits perfectly. The daily blog post 5 times per week is one of my many tools to communicate and clarify and repeatedly reinforce that vision and strategy. I think of course, in hindsight, that actually was one of the most powerful things I've ever done, because if you walk into the company, ask anyone, just randomly pick one out of the 300 plus employee at the time, around the time of the acquisition, everyone would be able to tell you very clearly what's the vision, what that statement is to entertain and connect the world through stories. Everyone would say that. What's the strategy, how we are expanding into movies and TV shows and become an entertainment company. Everyone would be able to articulate that. And all the other benefits is aligning everyone, having that daily communication in a very informal way. Blog post is very informal. It's not like an email. It's very, it's not like sending instruction. Sometimes I'm, as an example, sharing, this is a very interesting story I found on Wattpad, and this is what the writer is doing, and this is how the readers are enjoying the story. I share some of those anecdotes. Sometimes not everyone would know, but having that context, the very tangible benefit is because everyone has very similar context. They can collectively, make super high quality decision that is aligned with what other people in the company are doing. As a scale-up CEO, I cannot be involved in most of the decisions. I would say 99.99% of the company decision, I would not be involved. But how would they know? How would these employees know what I really want? I use that and many other ways to provide that context. Yeah.
And for those 1% decisions, those are the decisions that I think would move the needle for the company. So throughout the years of you scaling up, can you just take me through about some of the big pivots you made in the company to kind of scale Wattpad beyond just maybe a fast-growing startup to scale up eventually?
Yeah, perhaps I would not use the word pivots, because funny enough, the classic books that we did on day one. You can still find the classic books on Wattpad today. So we didn't really pivot, but we keep on finding interesting adjacent opportunities that we could expand into. For example, we became an AI company very early on, in 2012, because we already had like almost 20 million users. At that time, we had a lot of data. We didn't know how to figure this out, so we hired our first data scientist. His name is Brandon Sao, and now he's one of our partners at Two Small Fish Ventures. That founding data scientist, he taught us a brand new technology called artificial intelligence in 2012. So we became an AI company, and we use AI and, of course, other ways too, to find best stories and turn them into TV shows and movies. We started a division called Wattpad Studios in 2016 after spending 2 years making TV shows in Philippines and other places as an experiment, and those experiments worked. Then we doubled down and started the Wattpad Studio division. I think that was the biggest, riskiest, and most bold, ambitious initiative we have ever done in the company, because when you think about this, a mobile reading app company making movies, how can you connect the dots? But if you follow the evolution, it's actually quite natural. But it was, yet another contrarian bet that nobody foresaw. But in hindsight, it actually makes sense.
Maybe the right word to use was evolution rather than pivot. And it's interesting that you say that. It's like, if I think about like a similar analogy, would be like, if I think something like a Goodreads from Amazon, suddenly they go into movies, that might be weird. But maybe Amazon did make the right move to eventually go into streaming services, for example. The other point that now that you have kind of built it up to a scale up in 2019, in 2021, you exited the business to Naver, which on the surface seems quite weird because you're in Canada and this is a South Korean tech conglomerate. And you're like, why would they suddenly acquire you for quite a hefty price? I mean, why did Naver acquire you for $600 million?
We were not putting up a for sale sign at that time. I distinctly remember in year 2020, exactly a year before the acquisition, I set the company objective to and share with the entire team. We want the company to be IPO ready. And I explained to the team, we don't necessarily want to be IPO, but IPO ready means we are perhaps self-sustaining. We could choose to IPO, but we could raise a growth round. We could stay status quo. We have the optionality. We want to have all the optionality in front of us. And I mentioned growth round because we were pretty close to become profitable and practically break even around that time. And we had the option of raising more capital to fund the movie business and perhaps grow into other adjacent businesses, including perhaps comic, perhaps we were experimenting with audio. We have a few audiobooks and other form of entertainment, because already by that time we already evolved from a mobile reading app to multi-platform entertainment company that's selling books in the bookstore, movies, TV shows, perhaps a small way, audiobooks, perhaps using the IP into gaming and other forms of entertainment already. So we were at a crossroad where we could be more conservative from a capital investment perspective and be self-sustaining, but perhaps have more capital so that we can expand faster into other areas. And then COVID hit, and then our business actually grew even faster because everyone has time to read more. Our traffic literally grew a step function growth, like grew by 50% overnight or something along this line. So our thinking of expansion actually accelerated. And then an inbound offer came in, and we as in me and Ivan, look at the offer. Yeah, perhaps we should run the process and see whether we can find a partner as an option to us, and see whether we can choose between raising capital or find a partner so that we can grow the company faster. And then, keep a long story short, that process brought us to Naver. We know them for a while, of course. And then we quickly realized, after having the conversation, the first conversation, we quickly realized they are very similar to Wattpad. They have a webtoon division. They do comics, but other than that, it's exactly the same as Wattpad, except that it's not web novels, it's comics. But they take the IP, take the best stories on the platform and turn them into TV shows and movies, like us. So from a product perspective, very complementary. From a geographic perspective, also very complementary. Wattpad is a very global company, but there are a few jurisdictions like China, Japan, and Korea. We simply did not have a lot of users, but rest of the world, other than these countries, we were everywhere. And Webtoon was, guess what? Exactly opposite. So it's more like yin and yang. I can name 10 other things. And then it just makes a lot of sense to join forces, because with the help of Naver and Webtoon, the company can expand into other areas much faster, and the rest is history.
Yeah. And now you made the transition into Two Small Fish. You're investing in deep tech startups. It's crazy or insane how the evolution is. You started from maybe a kind of app, mobile-based reading service, and now you're making a jump all the way to the other end, which is investing in deep tech.
Yep.
So help me understand, why do you think that deep tech was maybe the area that you wanted to kind of focus your efforts and energies on?
Very good question. It comes very naturally, but perhaps need to give the audience a little bit more context. My wife, Eva, we met in engineering school. She's an industrial engineer, worked in semiconductor, of course, at Wattpad, an AI company before. So she knows software and hardware. And she joined us when we were struggling, during 2000, and I think she joined us in early 2009 before we, a year or two before we raised any capital. So by the time we raised Series B, she's not a big corporation, large company person, and then she left and we co-founded Two Small Fish Ventures in late 2014, early 2015. Just the two of us, co-founders. But in practice, I was running my own company, right? So she was for 99% of the time she was the one running with Two Small Fish. And for those who are curious, we are the two small fish. I have to say I'm the smaller fish. She is the bigger of the two small fish. We start to invest initially. only in AI network effects companies, which we know really well, but also many AI companies because we know AI also very well. I'm talking about it in 2015. And then by the time Wattpad got acquired by Naver, it was 2021. And right afterwards, I don't think I have another startup in me. It took me 15 years and doing another startup for another 15 years, not as appealing to me. But what's appealing was I'm an entrepreneur. I want to work with startups. I want to work with amazing entrepreneurs. I think that gives me a lot of energy and motivation. So I became a full-time operating partner at Two Small Fish, and because both of us are engineers, both of us understand. And by the way, I'm not sure I mentioned I'm an electrical engineer by training, so I know semiconductor, I know quantum physics, I know control system now, a big part of robotics, and telecom, all those things quite well, in addition to software. So very naturally, we start to look at other areas that we know very well from a technology perspective, but also have hands-on experience and understand the product and commercialization. The three phases that I talk about, and semiconductor became quite interesting to both of us, and we started to invest in semiconductor companies a few years ago, before the more recent AI hype, and we feel very comfortable with that. And then Brandon also joined us. Brandon, the founding data scientist at Wattpad. So we doubled down on AI. And then more recently, Albert also joined us. For context, Brandon is a system design engineer. He's an AI scientist. And Albert is a PhD in biomedical engineering. He was a CTO of a robotics company and photonics, smart glasses. He has done a few things like that before. So the DNA has not changed. We only invest in things that we deeply understand. We have the domain expertise. But now that domain expertise expanded a little bit, including robotics, including semiconductor, smart energy as well, that Albert used to work in. So it's not like deep tech is cool, that's why we invest in deep tech. It's actually the other way around. We invest in things we understand, and just happens to be these are the most impactful sectors in technology investment right now. So in a one-line description, we invest in next frontier of computing and its applications. That's why we became a deep tech investor.
Yeah. What's the filter that you use to assess and evaluate the deep tech startups you're choosing to invest money in? Because for deep tech startups, the incubation period is much longer.
Yeah.
And your payoff is much more uncertain in a certain sense.
You are not wrong in saying this, but I think there's also a misconception that all deep tech startups are very hard, very capital intensive, and very difficult to monetize. While maybe most of them are like that, you just have to find the ones that are not like that. Again, somewhat contrarian in a way, but in a way, sometimes the best opportunities is in plain sight that nobody else can see, but only you can see, right? So I guess as an example for semiconductor investment nowadays, people still think you need to have a fab, enormous factory to make semiconductor. While it's true, but it's not entirely true. You design the semiconductor on computer. All you need is a computer. You don't need any hardware. And when you need to test the manufacturer chip, you outsource that most of the time. And then when you test the chip, you like some of our portfolio companies, they rent they have access to accelerator. You can use the equipment for free. It's no different than a SaaS software startup. So I just the notion of deep tech or hard tech, someone call hard tech is hard. Yeah, it's hard, but if you know what you're doing, it's actually not that hard.
Maybe it's different because for you, your team at Too Small Fish, you're very concentrated in the technical talent and the people who deploy the capital, which might not be the case for most VCs. So in a sense, spotting the opportunity for you is probably your capability or your superpower that other VCs might not have.
Yeah, I think each VC must have an edge, right? And our edge is not growth stage, for example. Our edge is being able to seeing the future, seeing whether this product would take off when there might not be any commercialization yet, or there might not be much traction, sometimes no traction at all. But that's how you can get into those opportunities when they are not yet very expensive. And if you, as a VC, you have to rely on traction. Traction is easy. Everyone can ask the question, how much revenue you have, right? There's not a differentiated skill set. So I'm not saying it's unimportant. Don't get me wrong. It's just that if you rely on traction, you could be an amazing growth stage VC. You know how to analyze those numbers, right? But for early stage VCs, that probably might not be the skill that is that differentiated.
Yep. What are the glimpses of the future that you have seen so far in investing in the next frontier of technology?
It's actually one of the best, in my opinion, one of the best times because the foundation is there. What I mean by that is high-speed internet, computing devices. All these things are ubiquitous now. That's a good foundation of people collaborating, building on top of that. And if you, we saw similar phenomenon during the internet boom, and now of course, .com is, everyone knows the .com crash was not really a crash. It was just too early. The internet is so pervasive and so powerful. No one would dispute that. But one thing that's quite interesting is at that time, the cost of computation and cost of connectivity, they were perpetually dropping, and that drove up demand. And once you hit that tipping point of the cost is low enough, all of a sudden you change behavior. That's why we see TikTok. That's why we see Instagram. That's why we see a lot of the innovation that we've seen in the past 20 years. But now, in the era of AI, one thing is also very interesting. The cost of intelligence is also going down because AI is the first technology in human history that can learn, that can reason, that is actually cross-domain, that is also can make decisions without pre-program. Until AI, as much as we think the smartphones are very smart, the reason it's smart is because some smart engineers at Apple or the app developer, they pre-program everything, right? But AI completely changed that. It's intelligent. So because of that, we are seeing some of the very routine jobs that would require some intelligence or high intelligence even that human can do and only human can do. Now AI could replace that, perhaps make the human become superhuman, and that's actually very disruptive in a good way, because it's once the cost of intelligence drops below a certain point, it actually makes sense for AI to do all those things. That's why we start to see the humanoid and the robots, the self-driving cars. And I think we are only scratching the surface. There's so many new things that haven't been invented because of the cost of intelligence is so low, and it will be far lower from today. We are just seeing the tip of the iceberg right now. So that's why I said, this is perhaps the best time to be an investor in early stage companies, because the innovation is coming fast and furious.
Yeah, and the cost of production or the cost of starting now is much lower than it was back in your day.
Mm-hmm. Yes. As we witness TikTok, Instagram, and Wattpad as well, right? We democratize the creativity, democratize the creators. In the past, only unless you're Tom Cruise, you cannot make movies. Now everyone can be the next Tom Cruise on TikTok, right? So, ironically, software development or technology innovation is also being democratized, because now you can ask AI to create an app for you. You still need to know some programming, but millions more people, perhaps billions more people can become a software developer and create companies or app or products now. So I think it's the best time for entrepreneurs, because the capital requirement would be far lower. In the past, to start a software company, you still need to hire a few engineers. That's, you probably need $500,000 to $1 million just to get the ball rolling, unless the two co-founders can do it all. But then, of course, like in the old days of Wattpad, like the two co-founders, we are all engineers. So we could build the product without any external capital initially, but not everyone could do that. But now many people can do that, and that's exciting for the entrepreneurs. And that, in a way, to kind of connect the dots, that's why we are increasingly looking at deep tech, because once you have that democratization, easy come, easy go, amazing for the entrepreneurs. But the flip side of that is competition is also more fierce. Like the TikTok creators, they are not competing with 5 other artists. They're competing with potentially billions of artists. So in a way, you gain some, you lose some. Easier to start company, but to jump out harder. And also an investable company, the bar is far higher. That's why we look for deep tech and technology modes, which is not everyone can do. It's very hard to design a robot that's maybe not a simple robot, but some specialized robots that doing some very specialized in certain areas. That's actually very, very hard to do. You need that skill, and that's the barrier of entry.
You're still in Canada. You're operating mainly in Canada.
Mm-hmm.
You're funding a lot of the Canadian startups.
Mm-hmm.
What keeps you optimistic about the future of Canada?
Since I'm in Singapore, I think first thing I would say, these two countries are quite similar. Canada is one of the G7, but the number 7 in the G7 in terms of population, right? And we have a big neighbor, 10 times our population, called the United States, right next to us. So in a way, that contrarian philosophy actually works in smaller ecosystem like Singapore or Canada. We, as many people know, Many of the AI godfathers, they are actually in Canada. The Turing Award winner, for those who don't know, the Nobel Prize for Computing, many of them are based in Canada. So in a way, we have probably some of the best world-class scientists on many fronts, not just computing, but in the context of this conversation, computing, AI, we absolutely have the best people in the world. Leveraging that, having an ecosystem, retaining those talents and help them commercialize. And they came to Canada for a reason. We already attracted them, easier to retain someone that's already in there. That way, it's a smaller ecosystem is a less noisy environment, like the big fish, small pond effect in hiring people, that also true. I'm not saying a very, very tiny ecosystem could build a big company easily. But the fun fact is, the largest tech acquisition in Canada came off from one of our smallest provinces called Newfoundland. They only have 500,000 people in the entire province, but the largest acquisition from a company called Verifin to almost $3 billion came off Newfoundland. Who would have thought? So the internet, because it's connecting everyone, it actually levels the playing field a lot. You can learn a lot by, for example, listening to podcasts that might not be in the proximity. You can be half a world away. You can learn and read the same content and learn from the same mentor quite effectively these days. Nothing compares to in person, of course, right? But for a smaller ecosystem like Canada and Singapore, if you have the capital, you have the right mentorship, you have the right school, the right accelerators, all those pieces, I might be missing a few. If have all those elements, you can find areas where, for example, Silicon Valley or some other bigger ecosystems are missing. The world is large enough. Even in the US, the numbers don't lie. The number of unicorns, guess what, coming from Silicon Valley as a percentage, actually perpetually going down. Not saying it's big, absolute numbers going up, but half the unicorns in the US is actually outside of San Francisco. So the notion that you have to live in the big ecosystem to build an amazing company is absolutely not true. Doesn't mean you don't have to go there. I go to Silicon Valley quite frequently too. You learn from the people, you make the connections. I think that's important, but you don't have to live there.
Last two questions I have to ask. One book recommendation, because you're the founder of Wattpad, you have to answer this. One book recommendation, and then one piece of advice for a fresh graduate entering the workforce.
I guess the book, maybe there's some recency bias, is from Ray Dalio, The Changing World Order. But it talks about using the financial lens to talk about the rise and fall of the empires. And I think in today's very interesting geopolitics environment, learning from history is very, very important. History will not repeat itself, but history will rhyme. So I think that's a very good book. I really enjoy reading that. I think young people, perhaps students, but perhaps young people, two things I want to say. Everyone can be an entrepreneur, but you might not want to be an entrepreneur. That's okay. You can still be entrepreneurial. And to do that, you have to think out of the box. We talk about think out of the box, contrarian view. Sometimes the society has certain box from a social perspective, from a cultural perspective. I'm not saying it's not wrong, but by definition, as an outlier, you you are an outlier. You are different, and that's how you can perhaps seize the opportunities that other people cannot see, right? So you have to get out of your comfort zone, learn things that you might not think you would know how to learn, perhaps even, or might not be interested, but that actually increase your surface area, and that surface area actually enable you more opportunities. So of course, I'm not saying you be unlawful or anything. Think out of the box is more in the spirit of getting out of your comfort zone, getting out of the conventional norm, social norm, and perhaps that's where you can find interesting path for your future.
With that, thank you, Alan, for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Thank you for listening to today's episode. If you are watching this on YouTube, please consider subscribing and turning on notifications for whenever new episodes are out. If you're on Spotify or Apple, it would help us greatly if you could leave a 5-star review on those platforms. Once again, thank you for tuning in to the Front Row Podcast.